Orcs Must Die Deathtrap has all the pros and cons of a roguelike and an Orcs Must Die game. The repetitive game loop and tower defense elements work incredibly well together, and the constant stream of major updates has added in new game modes, traps, and maps is slowly transforming this game into something special. But even 6 months on, Deathtrap is still slightly lacking, with its saving grace being its reasonable price and 4-player experience.
Easy peasy. I knew they didn't stand a chance.
I may sound harsh, but I enjoy Deathtrap. Hilariously, I think it's currently my most played Orcs Must Die game, even if that is only because of the repetitive loop of the roguelike genre. If you enjoy the franchise and you want to play it with 2 or 3 people, then Deathtrap stands in a very good position to give you a mostly polished Orcs Must Die experience right out of the box. Is it the best game in the franchise? No, there are some major flaws with the game, but most of them aren't in the actual minute-to-minute gameplay, but rather how Deathtrap interacts with the new roguelike genre it's in. I also think that many of these issues could easily be solved through a major patch, all of which Robot Entertainment have shipped for free so far. It's admirable how Robot have handled Deathtrap with no monetizations for things like cosmetics and keeping everything as a part of the game experience, and that alone is something that I would wish to support. As of this review, these updates have been Arcane, Gnomecoming, Magnum Orcus, State of Slay, and Orktoberfest, each one adding in a bevy of new features, traps, and maps, all for free. I've been playing consistently, and the only reason my review hasn't come out sooner is because these updates keep being released shortly after I finished my script for the last update. I think I've got them this time though. Can't release a major update a week after your last one, can you, Robot? So first, simple stuff. You start a game, pick a map, and play 6 waves of Orcs Must Die. At the end of each wave, you can pick one of 3 threads that randomly boosts you or your traps, and at the end of wave 6, you can choose to leave the mission or continue on to a new one, where you now have to deal with slightly harder enemies and a distortion that can really mess up your day. This goes on until you either run out of rift points or stop playing. Orcs Must Die, roguelike, simple. At launch, the game had what I think is the largest selection of war mages to play. Varn, Ren, Harlow, Mac, Kalos, Sophie, and Max from the original Orcs Must Die, and then the Arcane update added in Gabriella from the second Orcs Must Die. Each of these war mages contains a mostly unique primary and secondary weapon, special move, hero trap, and an ultimate ability called Overdrive. While initially only Max and Gabriella had these special movement options, Magnum Orcus update gave all the launch characters either the double jump or dash movement as well. Outside of those abilities as well, they also have a special trait that you can upgrade in the metagame, as well as a bevy of threads for each individual run. I think this is a brilliant selection of war mages. Each one plays slightly differently and defers to a different aspect of an Orcs Must Die player that can then be split up between the maximum of 4 players to really drive the orcs back, or serve a single player as a new way to dish out really good punishment. The special traps aren't always that useful. I never found much of a use for Max's friendly flip trap, and some, like Sophie's vampire jaws, can be a little annoying since you have to replace them every time an orc wanders into it. But overall, I think the war mages are fairly well balanced, if not a little flat for each of them. They're all powerful enough for you to have fun on your own, but not so powerful that when playing with friends you feel like the main one, an issue that you would sometimes run into in Orcs Must Die 2 and 3. The issues arise when you stop playing and enter the hub world. Changing war mages in the hub takes several clicks into a menu that isn't the most obvious, and changing outfits is slightly more hidden than that. It's not a major barrier, but I had to explain it to a friend when playing, which shows that it could use an improvement. Similarly, I feel like there could be a few more war mages to really round out the roster. Adding Egan and Kelsey from Orcs Must Die 3 in would be really nice. They could have some fun, unique abilities, and the possibility of Master Cygnus returning has been hinted at, which would also be incredibly fun. Deathtrap hints as well at Unchained characters from the failed live service, Orcs Must Die Unchained. It would be quite nice to have some of those designs and powers moved over into Deathtrap, though that feels much more unlikely. I assume most people playing have a character or playstyle they play and stick to that forever, very much like myself, but I like experimenting with new traps and characters, and I'd like to see a few more get put into the mix to really flesh out the overall experience. Yet, whilst the war mages are slightly mixed, I think Robot Entertainment really did a great job with the maps. They feel better than ever and come in 3 different sizes, small, medium and large, and you can really tell and feel the size of a map, which makes them have different characters as you move through them in each run. The Arcane update chopped up a few of the larger maps to create smaller ones within the once larger experience, and they work beautifully. They've also added in several iconic maps from the old games with a slight twist to work with the meta of Deathtrap. These remix maps have been the focus, with the resort map being the only original addition post-launch. But these remix maps have been pretty fun. I haven't played all of them despite my time in the game, but the level design of all the maps has been spectacular, really pushing tactics and the controversial barricade limit they added in. My only continued quibble is that I think a few of the larger maps that haven't been cut up very easily could be. Arboretum, for example, could easily be 2 separate maps with a single rift on each. I would also like to see a new original map. I know that takes more time, so it's not something I'm saying needs to be immediate, but if the chop-up design is followed, I think that could easily be 3 or 4 different sizes of map. The downside of all these maps, though, are the Sentinels. Rather than being placed freeform, like in the previous Orcs Must Die game, Deathtrap does something more controversial than I think the barricades did, and forces them into static positions that Robot Entertainment decides, and you can only add rune coin in to buy them. It doesn't help that most of the Sentinels are garbage either. The Guardian Archer is useless because there aren't 50 million of them, and whilst the Priestesses are good, their placement in these maps make them virtually useless. The only good Sentinel is the Dwarven Cannoneer that has this really big cannon that just absolutely obliterates everything. This isn't something that I think can be changed. I think it's part of the core design, so I'm not going to hope for it to change, but it annoys me. I'm annoyed by it. The Gnome Coming update added in like new dynamic Sentinel called like the Gnome Balloonist. They randomly pop up in open spaces and give you this 2x4 ceiling space to place traps on, but other than that, they don't really do anything. I wish there was more interaction with them, that I could pay them to add small cannons onto the things, or flying enemies would go after the balloons, but as it stands, them sitting there is just fine. I hardly ever use them, but sometimes their voice lines are a little bit funny. There are a few roguelike specifics to Deathtrap, things that Gnome Coming added on for more random events, weather, time of day, kobold mounds, rift corruption and surges. They're all little random adjustments that makes the mission in that run a little different, not always better or harder, but different. I think this is where the game feels the most empty, honestly. A lot of these waves play out the same, and whilst the harder modes have these events pop up more often and throw more unique enemies into the mix, the early missions feel sparse, even with the difficulty pressed up. More weather events need to be added to spawn earth, air and fire elementals. Different times of day like noon, afternoon and morning need to be added to slightly randomise the horde, with afternoon missions having more heavy orcs and morning missions having more light orcs. Or add in things like the characters moving slower due to the midday heat and faster at night because it's cooler. Just imagine you have a spark shower, tiny flecks of raining down on you that spawn in fire elementals during a noontime map where everyone moves slightly slower because of the heat. Or a hurricane or some sort of storm that spawns in air elementals during the night where everything moves just a little bit faster. Then you add in things like the kobold burrows that force you to move you around, or a little money bags that runs about dropping little coins, and you're creating layers for players to interact with on each run. Then you add in new stuff like hellbat nests that spawn in hellbats, similar to how the kobold burrows do. Or have heavy orcs have a small chance to turn into the unstable orcs when walking across rift corruption. A lot of the issues with the actual game of Deathtrap would melt away if it felt more like a sandbox where each run just felt a little bit different, instead of now where it kind of just feels like Orcs Must Die 3 but slightly cut up and spread out over a roguelike system. This also applies to boss fights as well. I loved them, they were fun challenges that really pushed me, but after having beat them all, I've literally never come across them again. They need to happen dynamically after every 5 levels to force players to face a possible defeat without it being just a slightly harder map or having an infinite amount of orcs. Then add more bosses in and bam, you've made the game slightly harder forever and have new bosses that you don't see in the main game. That's the thing with Deathtrap. It feels like an early access game that is really strong but just needs more stuff. Where's the stuff? Oktoberfest added in a Deathtrap version of Endless Mode, which isn't what I wanted, but I'll take it, as well as a bunch of challenges I'm yet to play because I know I'll lose. That adds in charms and skins and little cosmetics, but where's the stuff? We need more stuff, and the stuff I've suggested is better than having no stuff at all. Embrace the stuff, Robot Entertainment. Embrace it. How long is this video? Christ, I haven't even covered traps yet. Good God. Okay, dig in. This is what 6 months of opinions does to a person. Traps. As of Oktoberfest, there aren't enough of them. There are a lot, sure, and I have used a lot of them, but quite simply, it isn't enough. We need more, and we need them fairly quickly, because traps are the lifeblood of an Orcs Must Die game. And whilst the lineup here is pretty strong, we need more traps to get crazy with. Luckily, there are still a large selection of traps from previous games to add in, so that fixes the quantity problem. Sadly, it doesn't fix the metagame problem. A thing I've been avoiding mentioning until now because it's my biggest complaint with the game. The metagame sucks. It is awful and it needs a total overhaul, and I'm not kidding or playing it up. It is genuinely awful. The way the game works with skulls in the metagame right now is a total mess, and whilst I appreciate what they were attempting with it, even with my 50 bajillion hours, I still don't have like the super expensive skins you can buy right from the start of the game. The issue as I see it is that there's too much to spend things on and nothing that really matters at all. The Arcane update added in Sullivan, the alchemist, who I have never used because the entire potion system is one that seems so superfluous yet costs so much I never have the skulls to experiment with it. The thread system in theory as well is very good, but as it currently stands it's very clunky, with some threads being bought via skulls, others being earned through challenges that you can't see unless you're in the hub world with the weavers. That doesn't even bring in trap progression that costs an exponential amount of skulls, and the skill tree that works similarly. It pushes for replay, but only gives you the bare minimum in return, making it constantly feel like you're wasting skulls for nothing. Now I'm being harsh, I have not come here without a fix. Well, I have a few actually, but that isn't as dramatic sounding. Firstly, traps. Upgrading traps is boring and stale. I get that this is to give power to the threads, but in the metagame, it makes the traps feel weak and spending your hard-won skulls on them feel like a waste. The fix for traps isn't to make trap upgrades more powerful, though that should be done with every trap at 5 stars feeling like it should be way more powerful than it currently does. No, that's something for a balance pass. Instead, here the fix is adding in a new progression path specifically with the threads. Oh, you're with me now, aren't you? And I'm gonna blow your mind with this next one, because as it stands, golden skulls are only used for a single purpose: buying traps. There is no other use for golden skulls, and once you get all of the traps in the game, you never accumulate any more. You complete a mission, you get a golden skull, you unlock the trap. If that's the last trap you have to unlock, you never get another golden skull after completing a mission. The fix here is to make it so that you can use golden skulls to upgrade threads with the weavers. This could range from a simple percentage increase to buying entirely new threads that change how traps work. I have an example. Say you have the swinging mace, and during a run you get a thread that speeds up the reset time of the mace by 50%. That thread can then be upgraded through golden skulls to eventually be boosted to having a reset time of 100%. So it moves twice at the speed. Add a simple curve in so you're not spending one skull to get each upgrade, and suddenly completing these missions becomes way more valuable and useful than before. Then add threads that do things like turn the mace into a fire mace or an ice mace or something like that that can be bought with this golden skull, and suddenly you've unlocked a whole new playground built into the roguelike system of the game itself. The best thing is, I think parts of this are already seen within the current game, because you can see how the threads currently work with upgrading all of this stuff, with the traps, adding in these special effects. They want you to play around with different runs, with different traps, with different variations. Upgrading threads is just the sensible thing to do here, and doing it with golden skulls makes them feel much more powerful and golden skulls much more relevant to the game. You then add golden skulls into like the gamble system, losing a percentage of your golden skulls if you're at mission 9, that if you lose, suddenly you're becoming a bit more wary. Maybe you don't go to mission 10 and you want to spend your skulls upgrading them back with the weavers. That same kind of system can then be applied to the skill tree, using golden skulls to create golden skills that gives slightly more powerful abilities to continue player progression. It could also be used to upgrade the hero trap some more, maybe make them more powerful or feel more powerful in comparison to the normal traps. Similarly, Sullivan could be changed, I think, perfectly. He currently works so you pay a large skull price per run to use a single elixir. I think that is too high a price, even for endgame players who have every single upgrade and are just racking up millions of skulls. Instead, I think golden skulls should be used to first unlock the elixir, and then a lower recurring skull payment goes out with every run, just like it does now, but that means you can play with many different elixirs, so you're not just stuck with the same one. It plays into the same system with the threads, but allows for much more experimentation within it, because most of the time it's overlooked because it's a pain in the ass. You don't want to spend 1,000 skulls for free chests in just this one run, but you change that to the golden skull, and then suddenly this is a 100 skull per run elixir. Now that's looking much more appealing, and you can switch in and out elixirs so you're not just using the same ones that give you the crazy buffs all the time. It's not perfect, it's not gone through a single professional game design pass. But I think there's something to this idea of using golden skulls to buff threads, creating golden skills, unlocking elixirs, also maybe platinum skulls for defeating bosses. That could be used as kind of like an ultimate upgrade, a platinum skill, a platinum thread. I don't know. Think about that one. Though my suggestion for the update name would be Ready and Weaving. Like Ready and Willing, but with weaving. No? Listen, they can't all be golden, right? Right, I think we're coming to the end now. The last few things to mention, just as a quick roundup of things that aren't important anymore, but are just nice to mention. The barricades don't have that annoying limit that they did at launch, so that's good. They did major character overhauls for Ren and Harlow, which made them look way better than their launch counterparts. It was entirely cosmetic, but I hope they do one for Mac and Van as well, because they didn't look great either. They also added in this like massive library in the hub world with a ton of statues to collect, but most seem to be out in the maps in the game, and I have literally no idea where any of them are. They also just added in a ton of challenges as well. I took a quick look and I played the endurance mode, and they seem like fun extra additions. I do still think they need a proper endless mode in. Having played endurance just feels like a freeform version of the challenges rather than actually being endless, since endurance mode, you know, ends. They've communicated that they're not doing an endless mode and that endurance is it as far as that's concerned, but I mean bullying is a thing. No, don't do that. I'm joking.
Or was I?
I've played Deathtrap for 50 odd hours now, with friends and without, and I can say that I've really enjoyed this iteration of Orcs Must Die. It's fun to jump in and play a round or two before jumping off, something that the others in the franchise don't really have. I do think it's missing some features, as I said in my massive long review and rant that I've just had. I didn't touch on enemies because Deathtrap is the first based Orcs Must Die game that I've played to have Cyclops mages in at the very start, and I love that enemy design, so I'm not gonna push that. I would like to see different elemental ogres and trolls and elementals as well as more flying enemies, but they're not high up on my wants, as the other things have said. The Platinum Skull, add that in. Despite my good feeling for Deathtrap, I can't help but feel like it's a little bit of an expansion for Orcs Must Die 3 rather than a whole new thing. It's probably because a lot of the DNA is from the third game and the Google Stadia money wasn't there for this one, so, you know. I know they added in a ending cutscene as well, which hints at the future. Hopefully Orcs Must Die 4 rather than some sort of expansion or free update for Deathtrap, but I love the franchise and I'm going to continue to play it either way. Clocking it at 20 minutes-ish with this done, as long as Robot Entertainment doesn't have any sneaky updates specifically to screw me over with this review. No? Okay. Now all I have to do is figure out how the hell this fan version of Unchained works. I hope this doesn't take another 6 months like the review for Deathtrap did.